And as 3D character creators, animators, and game developers, understanding anatomy is pretty crucial, as this brings about character recognition, evolution of realism, and plausibility, as anatomy provides a strong foundation for creating realistic and expressive characters. And understanding how anatomy works, body proportion, and movement all brings about that sweet spot where the character is no longer considered as CG, but now seen as a more realistic and recognizable character. And today we do have some interesting updates for you guys, as the folks at Vertebrate have just simply released their Vertebrate 3D app. This is a comparative anatomy 3D atlas that comprises of various collections of real-life skeletal anatomy from various museums, with partners and support from various organizations, museums, and also universities. And for those who would like to take a look at this, you can simply go over to the link in the description that'll bring you right here, where you can see all of the cool stuff that you can now totally play with for free. So once you come over to the website, you can choose to switch this from French to English. And if you like to see all of the specimens that currently exist here, then you can go ahead and check them out. And of course, you can go all the way up and filter these based off a particular vertebrate collection. So if you like to see some carnivores, you can definitely filter that. If you like to see some primates, you can also filter that. And of course, some ruminants, you can also filter that as well. And to any of the ones that you can filter, these are currently available for you to preview them in 3D. And to preview these in 3D is super easy. So all you need to do is simply launch the app. So once we click on launch the app, this is going to load up the vertebrate tool, which is made available by the folks at Leetoli. And right here, you can now switch these over to English if this is your preferred language of choice. And with this, you can either select if you like to preview the bones or if you like to preview the specimens themselves. Right here is where the filter exists, and you can filter this however you want. But then if you just want to preview these characters, then you can simply click on any of them, and this would load up the character in a 3D space. Now, by default, this sort of looks very Sketchfab-like, and to navigate across this is very simple. So with the left mouse button, you can click and orbit across the character. With the right mouse button, you can simply pan or move left and right. Now with the middle mouse button, you can simply zoom in, zoom out, you know, basic stuff. There's also a few other things that I think a lot of you guys would love, especially if you're into animating. So for example, if you're about to animate the Western lowland gorilla, you probably would want to have an idea of how the movement is. And to any of this anatomy that you notice that has this tiny button, of course you can use this to initiate the animation. So this is going to be very, very handy for those who are trying to create, say, walk cycles for characters, and you probably don't know how these characters actually work. Then in this case, you can also work with that. You can also choose this to make it work like a bipedal character if this is also something you're going for. And you can notice how the movement simply changes, and this would also come in very handy. Something else which you probably may have noticed is to individual joints that are bones that I have selected, you notice that their namings are here. We can also click on this button to get a full information of what this character is, and we can go through and read up on all of this. So for example, we now know that the number of parts that exist within a Western lowland gorilla is 179. Meanwhile, if you like to select certain parts of the model, and probably you just want to study how those parts of the model move when they're animating, this is also super useful. So what we can do is we can select the spine, and we've got all the spines selected, and we can choose to isolate that. So in this case, we now see how the spine wobbles, or you know, how it moves when the character is moving. And we can simply bring this all the way back. There's also a couple other selections that we can do. Instead of selecting this one after the other like you normally could, of course you can, we can also go ahead and click on this button and actually click on head, and we have the whole head selected. We can also select the left forearm or the left forelimbs, and we can also do the same thing for the right one. If you like to select multiple parts, you can simply click on the multiple selection, and we can select multiple parts in this case. So I can go ahead, click on multiple selection, and I can click on, let's actually stop the animation as it's making it a little bit hard to select. And we can select that, select these other one, and we can also select these other ones as well. So we can have all these parts selected. We can choose to isolate them if we just want to study these parts and see what and what we can do with that. If we bring this all the way back, there's also something that I think that might be super useful to a lot of you guys that we have here. So it's a very tiny button. If you click on this button, you can use it to select all of these individual parts that exist on the skull. And this is super useful, especially if you would like to, you know, just simply study how the skull of the model is. For the zoom in seems to be happening too rapid. I wish it's a bit more smoother and slower. That would help with a lot of selection and overview of certain parts. Meanwhile, with this, you can now select various parts, and you can also understudy various parts of the head. So we can have that selected, and we now know that that's the left maxilla, and we can also select that and we know that that's the right maxilla. So in case you're trying to study the head shape or probably the skull, this is going to be super useful. Again, if you're into sculpting or maybe anatomy, this is also something that I believe you would find super useful. Something else which you can also do is you can choose to go ahead and measure some points. So in this case, if we like to measure some points, so we can have that measurement starting point there for that bone, and we can have the other one somewhere about that much. And with this, we can now see what the measurement in terms of the length of the joint actually is. And this actually sticks to the model. So once you're moving it around, that sticks to the model. There is also another form of measurement that doesn't currently stick to the model. So if we would like to measure based off angles, this one, you have to move it over to a point in this case, and you can measure. So if you're into sculpting and you're wondering, what is the distance I need to, create or I need to sculpt in terms of the joint from one part of the leg of a character or of a bird to another, then this might give you a good guide, as currently we're looking at 135, and I think within the ballpark of say 135 to 130, that should be more like the angle that we should be looking at. On the other hand, there's also a couple of other cool things that you can do with this as well. So if we go over to the bone section, we can also choose to filter by a bone. If I go in and type in the word clavicular, we can take a look at all of the claviculars that currently exist. So say for example, we'd like to see the left one, we can see that, and this is for a human, and you can see that right there. It's a female one, and we can see that. And you can also do a bit of a compare. So say for example, we'd like to compare this with let's say a male or maybe a female character as well. We can also do that. So this is the clavicular of a gorilla, so we can see that, a western lowland gorilla, so we can see what the clavicular looks like. And of course, if you like to measure this as well, you can also measure just to get an idea of what you're working with. So in this case, we can see that the clavicular for that of a gorilla is about 0.14 centimeter roughly, and of course for that of a human, a female human, that is about 13.31. And lastly, before we go, let's talk about how you can compare specimen. So in this case, if I go over to the specimen, I can simply just toggle through and say, for example, I'd like to look at a hippo. And so we're going to load up the hippo. So once we have the hippo loaded up, we can go in and click on this button for compare. For this comparison, I might also want to take a look at something else. Let's take a look at something else, which I think, we can take a look at the author. So once you have this selected, if you would like to compare these, what you can do is simple, because at this point, once we have the head selected here, you don't get that part of this other one selected. And of course, you can also tell that there is a scaling distance here. So once you click on this button, you sort of link them both, just like you have in Photoshop and every other tool. So I can click here and you can see the corresponding part of this other mammal that gets selected. So I can also click on that part and you can see that as well. And you can do the same thing. So we can have this other one selected. And the same thing happens for all of the, the rib cages as well. We can do the same thing for the spine. Pretty useful stuff. So in case you're trying to subdivide your rig or probably use your rig in several ways, or maybe you do have some joints and you're thinking about how I can repurpose this joint without reinventing the whole wheel, or maybe you're into, creating skeletal build-ups for muscles and stuff, then this is also going to come in extremely handy as well. And so this is a very useful resource for anyone that is into character creation, you're into sculpting, probably you're trying to find some specimen, you like to see how their structures are, or maybe you're building muscles, or you're trying to create some sort of fat tissue sliding against the skin, or possibly you're into rigging and you're wondering how you can rig a particular character, then this is definitely useful, and I would suggest that you go ahead and check it out. And speaking about anatomy, if you really want to learn more about the human anatomy, then you might want to consider taking a look at the Becoming a 3D Artist Complete Tutorial Guide from the folks at Flip Normal that is currently available on Humble Bundle. So just in case you would like to grab this, then you can simply go ahead and check it. There's also a couple other things that are now here for Humble Bundle, and we're going to make a video about these ones and let you guys know. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section, and of course a huge shout out to the folks at Leatoli and Vertebrae for making this possible. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And until I see you guys in the next one, peace.